What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Leading Leaders. I'm here with another amazing leader, Steve Quisenberry. How about you go and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Steve Quisenberry. So I've been most of my life in the business world. Always had a heart for the things of God, for ministry and stuff like that, and helped where I could. And in the last few years, God's been really opening a lot of doors to do more ministry stuff, and we're just stepping into it.
It's awesome. So I have to ask you, what was the initial thing that really brought you into doing God's ministry?
Well, that's a good question. If I'm honest, I went to church my whole life and never even thought about doing something to contribute. I just went. It's a place you go. Everyone does everything, and it's a great place to go. But Danny Williams, local state rep, was actually driving the bus, picking up kids on Sunday mornings. I was a teenager, old enough to have my license. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Not much, man." He goes, "Well, Sunday mornings, you're going to go with me and pick kids up." And I was like, "All right, let's go." So kind of didn't really want to do it, but hard to say no to that guy sometimes. So said yes. And then we went and picked up kids and for a few months. And he's like, "Hey, I'm not going to be around the next couple of weeks. You got to drive the van." And I'm like, nervous wreck. I can't do this without him. And so I drove, picked up kids, and then it got to be where I was doing it more and more. And that was kind of the first thing that I ever did for God, I guess, inside of a ministry. And it was rewarding, getting the relationship with those kids and see the smiles on their faces, know that, they're getting their lives changed by what happens where we haul them to. And then, fast forward, a youth pastor I had, Tim Tate, local, and he's actually one of the pastors now. Man, just watching him and watching how he interacted with the youth in the church, and just seeing that there was something in him that was different. That when he talked about his relationship with God, it didn't seem like he was talking about his grandma that lived in Michigan. It seemed like he was talking about a guy he had breakfast with.
Yeah,
it was a lot different. I was like, wow, he's got something that I want. And so, man, I just pushed into the things of God with that, and then opportunities came. And then once he left, the new youth pastor, him and I kind of tag teamed for a while. That's when I first started getting to speak and share, and just have always just felt like it was something God wanted me to do.
That's awesome. Well, I think it's funny that you said that it's not really something that at first you wanted, because and that you started out in van ministry. Dude, van ministry to me, I don't care what anybody says, I think it's an amazing ministry.
Yes,
I do it every Wednesday.
For sure.
I think it is probably one of the most rewarding ministries, because you can see where they come from.
Yes.
And where you pour into them.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then as well, I was the same way, where I lost not really lost God, but lost track of where I was. And, I like to say, and I've told my youth kids this, that God found me in the desert. And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" As I was literally in Middle East with one of my buddies, and I was sitting there, and internal conversation with God was, "All right, if you're gonna find me, you better come find me here." Yeah. And one of my friends that he was my friend, but he wasn't like a close person to me, ended up walking up to me, "Hey man, you wanna do a Bible study?" And I was just like,
wow,
okay, all right.
Yeah.
So he finds you no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
On even when you're not necessarily running away, but you feel like you're 9,000 miles away from him.
Yep, you're always in his view. He always knows where you're at, and when he calls your number to step up, he knows how to get a hold of you and get your attention. And talking about the bus ministry stuff, I was a teenager when I did that, probably 2 or 3 years. Probably 17 to 20 or so, and I'm going to say 10 years later, had a lady call me who I used to take her kids on the bus. She was 15 years older than me, probably. She's like, "Hey, I need you to come by my house. My husband is about to commit suicide." And I'm like, "What are you? I'm not the guy to call." Yeah. And she's like, "No, he knew how much you cared about our family, because what you came and got our kids, and actually drove the parents too for a long time." And she's like, "You cared enough about, he won't listen to anybody but you." And it really shook me to the core. I was like, wow, you don't know the impact you're having. Yeah. And so I went over there and talked to the man. He was really distraught. upset, and he said, my life's horrible. I want to commit suicide, and we talked for a while. We prayed together, and he didn't, and still alive to this day. But you just never know the impact you're going to have from even a small thing,
Yep. And I think that's one of the greatest things is we never know what our seeds are truly going to grow into.
Yes, 100%.
We're throwing out as much seeds as God can give us, and then we hope to see the harvest from it. But at the same time, we don't know how big the harvest is going to be.
Yep, that's true.
So we'll dive into your ministries a little bit. In your prison ministry, you brought up to me off screen that you did some prison ministries. Was it hard for you to create and establish a relationship and good engagement when there was literally and mental walls in between y'all guys?
Was it hard to connect? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, like connect.
It really wasn't. When my wife and I were doing that, we were in our mid-20s, I guess, and they were really open. The guys in the prison and the ladies, they're really open to connect. And one thing a guy told me once, he said, I respect what you guys have to say more than these old people. I'm just paraphrasing, but he said, you guys are saying the same thing. He said, but I don't know why they're here. He said, but you and your wife could be out, it was my fiance at the time. He said, you guys could be out doing anything on a Friday night or a Saturday. You guys could be out having fun. You could be at a club. You could be doing whatever you wanted to do, fun for yourself. And he said, the fact that you guys are in here taking your time to come in here and tell us that God loves us, he said, that gets our attention because, we don't know what these guys' agenda are, but you guys believe what you're saying, to sacrifice to be here. And it really opened a lot of doors. You get a blend of people in prison and jail ministry. I mean, everything from the guy that wrote a hot check to a murderer or a rapist or whatever. So it's not a one size fits all in the interactions. And we went through a lot of training to do that. Had to get certified through the state, and through that training, they told us, here's some tricks that some guys might try to play, but we didn't want to have too much of a wall up. We were there to share the love of Jesus, and we connected really well with those guys, and actually several of them that got out became friends of ours. I mean, one of my best friends in the world, I met him in prison. Dude, he did 10 years for he was 18 years old, selling marijuana in Oklahoma, and now it's legal. But he was a Christian kid. He got off on the wrong track, and he was just about to get out when I met him. He was 28, and we met, became friends. He actually, when he got out, he worked with me for a while, and I mean, he's a guy that never looked back. He's like, I don't want that life. I don't want that. I don't want to go back to jail. And he just totally turned a corner. But yeah, we connected really good, and I think just not having an agenda, not going in there to be somebody or have something to brag about or preach and try to draw attention to yourself. That's something we noticed in prison ministry is those guys and the ladies, they're very much against someone trying to be a peacock. Mm-hmm. Like if one of the other inmates is always saying, hey, let me sing a song in this service, or let me pray, and he's trying to get up there and get attention, they don't like that. They're like, what are you trying to do? You think you're better than us or whatever? Yeah. Whatever the thought is on that, but don't have any self-motivation. Go in there to show love, and love tears down a lot of barriers, man. Yeah. And so that's just what we did.
Yeah, well, and it's I think it was pretty awesome to me that you did prison ministry, because I worked for Department of Corrections for 5 years before I came over to where I'm at now, and like you said, you get to see both sides. Mm-hmm. I had one guy that was in prison for his 5th DUI, and he was doing 20 for a 5th DUI, wow. And another guy that was in there for life for murder. Wow. Wow. So, you see all walks of life, but, and at the same time, I wish that I could go back sometimes and have different interactions. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, God was building me into who I needed to be at the time.
Yep. And I think those guys, they just want to be treated like a human.
Yeah.
They don't want to be treated like a livestock that's got to be caged. They know they're in a cage. They know they messed up. Treat them like a person.
Well, and that was one of the biggest things that I ever taught any CO when I was training them was respect for respect.
Yep.
You give respect, they give respect, then you give respect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's one of those things. I said it's a full all around circle, but at the same time, it goes both ways.
Right.
But were there any major complications or issues that you ran into when you were trying to get involved in prison ministry?
Just the training, honestly, and it was a little bit. I think it was a couple of Saturdays or something, but then they do a background check. But no, I mean it's pretty open. They need people to get in there and do it. And the state, I know Oklahoma has a really good track to get you involved. It was really easy to do. And then just show up and get on the schedule and do it.
That's pretty cool. So you also talked about doing missions ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find it difficult in finding the bridges in between like cultural divide, like how we live in our culture compared to what their culture was when you go over there?
Just as far as how we live, like
it's like the presentation, right? So like
gotcha.
Because I know if you go to the Middle East, if I go to shake your hand with my left hand, that's like giving the middle finger to somebody.
Well, yeah. So that's a really good question. So I really struggled. Like the first several times I spoke in another country, it's like, how am I going to preach the same exact thing I preach in America? How's it going to be received? Like, are they going to think I'm crazy if I'm talking about, I mean, I grew up in 80s, 90s, and there was like a whole, like a prosperity gospel thing that went around. Think of it whatever you want, but like, I wouldn't have got up and preached the prosperity gospel, but that crossed my mind. It's like, would I preach that here?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that, God can't financially bless people. Absolutely he can. But what's culturally relevant? And I heard a preacher one time say, if the gospel that you preach can't be preached in every nation, it's not the right gospel. And so it really made me have to focus and think, what do I believe? What do I not believe just because I've heard it and it sounds good and I want to believe it? What has God showed me in the Word? What is the truth? And you know what it comes down to? God loves people. God wants to forgive people. God wants to restore people. God cares a whole lot more about your relationship with Him and other people than He cares about how much money is in your bank account or what kind of car you drive. So to me, putting the focus of the message on what God has the focus on really made that easier.
Yeah, 100%. That's good, dude. I like that. I took a class on it and stuff in college, and those basically some of the things that they said was like what you said. What's going to make sense? That I tell you, oh well, you're in a third world country, God's going to manifest money out. Could He? Well, absolutely, He could. But or is it, hey, there is a guy that I know that He changed my life.
Yes.
And He wants to change your life. Yes. All you got to do is give your life to Him.
Yep.
Which one makes more sense?
Right. And the definition of your changed life will look a whole lot different for them than it would for us. But changed life's changed life. Like redemption's redemption.
Yeah.
And I think too, in the West, and I thank God I live in America, I'm not an anti economic person. I believe in that God can bless you financially. I'm not saying that. But I think that we have the luxury of having a fairy tale Christianity. Because I can say, oh, this happened to me. That must mean God's blessing me. Well, it might mean that. It might just mean that you live in a very prosperous country. There's things that we attribute to God that aren't necessarily true, but we've created our own religion based on what we want to believe, not on what the Bible says.
Yeah.
We live in Oklahoma, Tornado Alley, and I remember watching several years ago a tornado had hit, I think Norman or Oklahoma City or something, and they're interviewing the people in this neighborhood that the tornado went through, and this lady is, or these people are crying. They said, the tornado it killed my neighbor's son. It killed him. It's so tragic. My neighbor, their little boy's missing. He's dead. And then they're like the people interviewing are like, oh yeah, that's horrible. Oh my gosh, we hate that. they go across the street and there's a lady and they're like, hey, did the tornado affect you? And she's like, yeah, tornado came through, ripped half my house down, and I couldn't find my little chihuahua or whatever kind of dog it was for 3 hours, and I was praying and God brought my chihuahua back. And I'm sitting there thinking, did God bring your chihuahua back and let that kid die? Like, is he that involved? And I'm not saying he can't be. I'm not saying he doesn't care about that. But like, to say that, what if you go across the street and tell those people, hey, God brought my chihuahua back. Obviously, he didn't care about your kid as much as my dog. Like, that's the reality of having a fairy tale gospel. It's hard for people to hear. I mean, if I was those people and I saw her on the news, it's going to break my heart. I'm going to say, what kind of God are you serving that would do that? And so I think we have to be really careful about our message and about what we proclaim to be the gospel. You better be right. Because, a twisted gospel, a perverted gospel is what the enemy used to try to trip up Jesus. It's what he tried to, he tripped up Adam and Eve with. And so a twisted theology will derail people's lives.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the biggest things and that's why I tell everybody when they're preparing a message or anything, does it align with the word?
Yep.
And if it aligns with the word, awesome.
Yep.
Then you're there.
Yep.
You hit it.
Yep.
But if you're missing a step or you're taken out, you need to reevaluate and go back again.
And there's nothing that happens that's outside scriptural explanation. Like, say that lady's dog. Well, if someone asked me, well, why do you think her dog came back after she prayed for it? I would go to the verse that says, time and chance happen to all men. God sends rain on the good and the wicked. Like, things just happen in this world. Like, there is such a thing as time and chance. It is a scriptural principle, and her dog got lucky and survived the storm. I don't think God handpicked the dog to live but the kid to die. That's not God. But we have to be sure when we say things that we aren't painting that picture accidentally. And I think we can all do it in lots of ways, you know.
Right, and a lot of times is the misconstrued words of somebody. I find it that sometimes when I say stuff that if I do not explain my meaning, it can be misconstrued.
For sure.
And I used to be really bad where I don't need to give you an explanation of what I'm saying. You're just going to take what I'm saying. You can think of what you think.
Right.
But that's one of the things that God has put in me more now, that is a patience to actually, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I see. This is what I truly meant by that. Like, literally today, I texted somebody. I was like, hey, when is this going to be here? And then I was like, I apologize. That sounded extremely aggressive. I meant, like, when is this time? What is the time frame that we have here? And it's why technology is such a big downfall, is because what you text on your Facebook post can be extremely misconstrued compared to what you're actually saying.
Yep. And I think when we don't clarify, it leaves, if there's a question mark, what do they mean by that? Then people almost always default to the worst.
Yeah.
And so you do yourself a favor by making it clear.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you feel like is the driving point that you are impressing into your youth group now compared to when you were first involved in the youth ministry?
Wow. So when I first was involved in the youth, I was in my early 20s probably when I started, I guess late teens, and I didn't know a lot. I always thought I did, but you have, when you're younger, you have a lot of like desires. Like, I want this out of life. Like, I'm going to grab life by the tail, and this is what I'm going for. And for me, a lot of my theology was based on like kicking butt and taking names, or what I'm going to do, or how much I'm going to accomplish. And at the end of the day, the only way to ever really accomplish something significant is in alignment with God's purpose, because otherwise you're just building a house of cards, right?
Yeah.
And I went down that road. I mean, we went later on in life, just personally went down the road of just doing what I thought was the best thing to do in life, and it cost us. We lost everything we had, but yeah. So really, I feel like if I could sum it up to a couple of sentences, I would say early on, I probably had a human effort-centered way of thinking about the things of God. Let's do this. Let's go. We can make things happen. And now, dude, I have a presence of God. Let God lead and let God provide and let God do theology. I do think, obviously hard work goes hand in hand with God's plan. God told Noah to build the ark, but he still had to build the ark.
Yeah.
But I think that anything that's going to be fruitful and long-term beneficial in the earth for the kingdom needs to be birthed in heaven. It needs to be birthed in your heart. It needs to be birthed through time spent with God, through prayer, through his presence, through his leading. And then you get to partner with him on his plan rather than just, this is what I think should happen. Let's make it happen. God bless us. So for me, I push, and I'm just now starting back up again with the youth. We just took that over. But the thing I want to see the most is I want to see them push through the outer court, push through the inner court, and get into the holy place with God. Get into the place where they're face to face with the presence of God. They're face to face with the one who created them, and let him speak purpose into them. Let him speak purpose into their lives, so that you don't have to go around and spend 20 years trying to find it. Well, he can speak that purpose into you. And I shared that with them Wednesday night briefly. My wife just bought a Tesla car. Super complicated, okay? And I'm pretty techie, but I've spent the last month trying to figure that thing out. And every time I learn something else that the car will do. And that's what I told the kids. I said, but if Elon Musk sat down in that car, he could show me everything because he designed it. Him and his team designed that car. So he could sit there and show everything that it would do. That's going to take me years where I may never find out the Easter eggs he's hidden in what that car will do, right? So, and that's what I told him. I said, why would we want to live a life on our own terms of how we can figure things out whenever the one who designed us with a purpose, who created us with a purpose, and who gifted us and gave us the talents that we have, he is willing to sit down with you and show you what's possible and lead you into what's possible for you. That's what I want to see the kids do.
Yeah, that's good. That's what I found. Me and our executive pastor was talking about this the other day. Almost it lines exactly with what you're saying. Was that I hear so many people talk about, well, I want numbers. I want 200 kids to come. And yeah, that's awesome. Don't get me wrong. I would love to have that many kids come. But at the same time, I would be just as happy with a handful of kids that actually got on fire for God.
Yeah. Yep.
And they were able to take their fire and light everywhere else they go on fire.
Yep, that's right.
And I think people are misconstruing what we're supposed to do. As youth ministry, what we're supposed to do is I'm supposed to help you be able to spark that fire.
Right.
Show you what it looks like. And if I'm not showing you, if I'm not leading you in that direction, what am I doing?
Right. Yep.
And I think that's where everybody is missing the point. Is we're looking at numbers and statistics.
Events
and in all actuality, it's that connection and then that hey, this is God really wants to be in this place with you,
right? With
you, not around you. He wants to be with you, sitting with you, right in this place.
Yeah, and that's the most valuable, priceless thing in the world. It's like, well, why would you not want to connect with the Creator? Because it's real, it's life changing. Why would you not want that? And I look at like Jesus, the time that he spent in ministry on the earth, he had 12, he had 70, and he had the masses. I don't want to be in the masses. I don't want to be in the 70. I want to be in the 12. I want the 3. Yes, the 3 exactly. And I feel like that's up to us to a huge degree in the world that we live in. Is how much do you want? How close will you follow him? And I use the analogy. I don't know if it's a good analogy, but sometimes I feel like the way God leads people through life is he's walking backwards in front of them. Come on. And he'll reveal the next step, reveal what you should do, give you the next level of understanding, the next depth of spiritual knowledge, whatever. But he's going to walk in front of you at whatever pace you choose.
Yep.
You can live your life as Christian, go to church, put some money in the offering plate, try not to cuss, try not to drink, whatever, do the bare minimum and go to heaven. But like, why would you?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you? And I think he's got enough grace to let that happen, but he's still always beckoning, just come a little further, come a little faster, come on and take that course. And you see these people in history who do these amazing things, and the Billy Grahams, the people that did the miracles, the Moody, like all those guys, and you think, why did God use them like that? Was it his choice or was it their choice? Or was it a mixture of the two, right? And so what's available to you, you can only get that by pursuing God as hard as you can. And like I don't want to leave anything on the table. Like I want to see what's possible. I want to go and whatever God's called me to. And I think that's what we are going to be held accountable to. Jesus told the story. We don't like to talk about angry Jesus. We like to only talk about butterflies and unicorn Jesus. But Jesus said there's going to be a judgment day, and he's going to call every man and say, what did you do with what I gave you?
Yeah.
And to the one, he's like, you used it, so I gave you more. You used yours, so I gave you more. You hid it. I don't want to hide it. Like, I don't want to just skirt through and say, you know what, I'm not interested in doing anything on his behalf. I just want to survive. Mm-hmm. That's a scary place to be.
Well, it's funny because the first thing that popped in my head when you said you hid it, it makes me think of like Lord of the Rings, Smeagol running away holding the ring. Yeah. Yes, it's so precious to you, but instead of sharing what it can do, you're hiding it all to yourself.
Yeah.
Because you want it. You want it. Man, one of the greatest things that I think I found, the more of a relationship I grow with God, is that the more that I press into other people, the more that I get more of him.
Yeah, that's good.
It's the more I pour out, the more he fills me up.
Yeah.
And it's just never ending. It's just continue and continue.
Well, he said that rivers of life will flow out of you. And some of us want to be a pond.
Yeah.
I don't want any movement. I want things to be static and normal, but that ain't how it works. Ponds get stagnant. Like water's got to be coming in for water to go out. Yeah. And so I think being connected to the source and being a giver of sharing the life that he gives you, sharing the revelation, the knowledge, the love, the whatever it is that he's pouring into you is how you get more. You're absolutely right. It's a river.
No, that's good. So I will close it out with one more question. What would be your advice to somebody who is starting out in their leadership role?
So somebody who is wanting to, or somebody they've got started?
They're jumping in.
Okay, they're in, and now what do we do?
Yep.
Gotcha. Man, I would say don't get distracted, because you need to, you're in an organization, most likely. You're under a pastor, under someone, whether it be business or whatever. But don't be afraid to seek God, pray, and get a vision for what he has for you and what he has for that ministry or that business or whatever. Don't just be a robot and do what you're told. Like, be a dreamer. Be a dreamer. Bring that, because any leader that hires you or brings you in for an organization or they think that you're capable of doing something valuable to them. So I feel like your responsibility is to bring all the value you can. And in a ministry, that's hear God. What is God's heart for this season? What is God's heart for this ministry? What is God's heart for this church? Get that and push into it and let God spark the dream in you, because whenever God speaks the purpose into you, he gives you the fire and the energy to make it happen. Don't just punch the box. Okay, I got to come up with a sermon for Wednesday for you. If I got to, raise this money for this organization. No, let God birth a fire in you of what his purpose is for that, and that will be your fuel to accomplish more than you ever thought you could.
That's good. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. That was good.
Well, brother, I want to do a reverse Sean Ryan. All right.
All right.
So you invited me to your podcast. I got you a little something.
Well, thank you, man.
You bet, man.
How did you know? Thank you very much, man.
You bet, man. I love Gerber knives. I do.
Me too.
Good stuff.
Well, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Y'all guys come back. Get ready for another amazing leader.